Hello and welcome to our weekly Torah Talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Elliot Dorff, Rector and Professor of Philosophy at the American Jewish University. Hello, Rabbi, and thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Our Parsha is Balak, and it has one great story to tell, the story of Bilam. It begins with this psukim. Vayar Balak ben Tzipor et kol asher asa Israel laEmori. Balak, the son of Tzipor, saw all that Israel has done to the Amorites. וישלח מלאכים אל בלעם בן באור פטורה אשר על הנהר ארץ בני עמו לקרוא לו לאמור הנה עם יצא ממצרים הנה כיסה את עין הארץ והוא יושב ממולי. He sent messengers to Bilam the son of Beor to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of his people, to call for him, saying, a people has come out of Egypt, and behold, they have covered the eye of the land, and they are stationed opposite me. So why do we call this Parsha Balak after the king and not Bilam after the prophet that was asked to curse the people of Israel?
Well, that's the usual style, namely that if the Parsha is named after the first unusual word that you get in the first line of the Parsha. So since Balak is mentioned before Bilam, Balak is the name of the Parsha.
But truly, Bilam is the hero of this story.
Sure, he is definitely the hero and the primary focus of the story. But he would not have been unless Balak had called him in order to curse the Israelites.
Is Bilam a positive character?
Bilam is in some ways a positive character because he is among the very few in the Torah, in the Bible altogether, that are given true prophecy. The presumption is that there are all kinds of sorcerers and witches among the other nations of the world who don't have true prophecy, and even among the Jews. Jeremiah, in particular, complains about a lot of false prophets. But here you have a non-Jew who's given what is, at least in the Torah, described as creditable prophecy. That is something that is indeed a true prophecy. Now, of course, it's against his will. It's certainly against Balak's instructions. So he's saying what God puts into his mouth. But he is there is high fidelity there, right? In other words, there is the actual words of God that are at least as the Torah presents it, that are coming out of Bilam's mouth.
Right. One of the things I find truly peculiar about this story is the extent to which it is very detailed. And in one of the greatest intricacies of it, we found the mysterious story about the speaking donkey of Bilam.
Right.
What is it about? Why do we even need to know this detail about the Lord opened the mouth of the she-donkey and she said to Bilam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? Because Bilam is hitting his donkey and finally the donkey talks to him.
Right.
Why do we need to know this?
I mean, first of all, because I think it gives an aura of magic and of something completely unusual. As a matter of fact, the rabbis say that among the very last creations of God, on the 6th day of creation, was the creation of this donkey that could talk. Because even the rabbis recognized that this was at least highly unusual and certainly something that was supernatural. Certainly not, donkeys don't talk. And so even the rabbis, I think, recognized what we would now call the mythological character of the whole story.
Right, and does it play any specific role? Do we learn a lesson from this donkey?
Well, I think we learned that. First of all, what humans understand is very limited, sometimes even to the extent that donkeys know better than what we know about what is indeed the truth and what is indeed the moral thing to do. So if anything, it gives us a sense of, or it should give us a sense of epistemological humility. That is humility about what we can know and what we understand to be the right way in life. So minimally, I think the purpose of that story is that. But I think also the purpose of the story is to show that God is in fact behind the whole scene. That Bilam thinks he's doing what he wants to do, and Balak is certainly doing what he wants to do, but that God is actually controlling the entire story. So there's a certain sense of what the Germans later call Heiligsgeschichte. This is holy history, in the sense that God is effectively controlling us as puppets almost, which raises, of course, by the way, real questions about free will and about responsibility for what we do and all of that.
Well, we can say that he only controls in such a way the people who are not part of the people of Israel, because Bilam is not from the people of Israel. So maybe all God is trying to show us is that he can manipulate our enemies, but not necessarily us.
Yes, but of course then, in a post-Holocaust world, that raises real questions about theodicy, right? Namely, if that's the way you interpret the story, namely that God controls non-Jews but not Jews in terms of their free will, well then why didn't God control the Nazis? So I mean, if that's the lesson you're learning from this, it raises real questions for us in our time. And by the way, not just in our time, it raises questions about the Crusades and the Inquisition and the pogroms and all of that.
Well, there was a scandal involving an American pastor, if I remember correctly, just a couple of years ago, who spoke about about Hitler as a messenger from God or of God.
Yeah, I give no credence to that whatsoever, to that view whatsoever. I mean, truthfully, I mean, I think I personally would be loath to generalize over this donkey and over the control that God is wielding over Bilam's free will, because the more, to the extent that you extend that model, then what you're saying is that non-Jews are not responsible for what they do either, and I don't think that that's a Jewish way to look at the world. I mean,
so what is the lesson from this story? If that's not the lesson, what do we learn from it?
Well, I think the fact that the rabbi said that the donkey was created in the last moments of creation, and that this was a special creation, that this was not the general way in which the world works, the rabbis themselves see this story as an unusual story, not to be generalized over in terms of anything that happens in our lives. Donkeys don't talk, and by and large, God does not pull the strings that we operate by, and therefore we have free will, and therefore we have the responsibility for what we do. I think that is the general way in which the Jewish tradition understands this. And this story is an exception to the rule. And as such, I think it is telling us that, what I was mentioning before, that we have to, even a true prophet, in other words, a prophet that is saying what God wants, needs to understand that his understanding of the world is limited. And therefore we all should have what I call epistemological humility, that is, humility about what we can know and what we can do in the world.
Do we as a people benefit from the blessings of Bilam?
Well, I mean, the way that the story is told is that the Israelites definitely did. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite rabbinic interpretations of the Torah comes in this Parashat, in which you have the famous line, "Ma tovu halacha Yaakov, Ishkenotecha Yisrael." How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. And then the rabbis ask, well, what did Bilam see such that he blessed the people Israel that way? What was so good about the tents of Israel? And what they interpreted to mean is that what was good about them is that the entrance to one tent did not face the entrance to another tent. It rather faced the wall of another tent, so that you had private. That the way that the rabbis understood it, that what was so good about these Israelite tents is the way that they were placed, such that they guaranteed the privacy of each and every home. And that becomes, I think, a really important value in our tradition. The rabbis will later say that even when you're entering your own home, you've got to knock on the door first, so that people within your own family know that you're entering. So that there's a sense of privacy that we're supposed to preserve, even for the members of even within the family, let alone for people that are outside of our family. And I think that that's really important, because what it does is that it establishes a very strong sense of what in other parts of our Torah are understood as being the image of God in each one of us. That each one of us has to respect the other one of us to the extent of preserving that person's privacy. That doesn't mean that you have to like everybody. It certainly doesn't mean that you have to like what everybody does. But it does mean that you've got to preserve a sense of respect for each person, including a certain sense of privacy, even between, let's say, husband and wife, or between parents and children, that there needs to be a certain sense of respect of that person's private domain.
Humility and privacy. Rabbi Dorff, thank you and Shabbat Shalom.